So how's things?
Good. I went to the OGM SenseDoing thing this Monday. That was pretty interesting. Curious to see how that continues, but it's a lot of new faces for me around there. I'm happy to kind of weave my way in and meet more people. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I've watched some videos of theirs, but I don't think I've joined particularly myself. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Knock on one, please. I'm so confused. Tim said, "Oh, I'm so confused that because there was we're meeting in an hour, and then at the end of the hour here's a recording."
Yeah, it went on early and it auto recorded. So.
Oh, you did start early.
No, I just accidentally hit the wrong button and it started the Zoom.
I see.
It's a 20-second video. It's been uploaded.
So let's see if Tim comes, but we'll see. So,
Do you have any topics they want to cover today?
I don't have that much to report because I've been busy on call for proposal, where I'm more looking into the social aspect of things than the theory aspect of things. I'm spending a lot of time talking with, also I'm active in the collabathon of the Collaborative Tech Alliance. This is a very interesting space. I had a very interesting conversation there with, who's coming?
Yeah.
Hi, Jack. Yeah, just giving a bit of report. In the collabathon, the Collaborative Tech Alliance, I've had long conversations with Simon Grant, which were really interesting. Simon Grant is interested in, he calls it ontology commoning. So in a way, I talk a lot about alignment on definitions. He's interested in alignment on ontologies. But one thing he told me, which makes perfect sense to me, is the point is not to create the Uber ontology that takes in all the distinctions, or maybe, for me, it still is, but the point is people won't work with that. And there I'm with him. People work with ontologies that make sense to them, that are tailored to a use case, and that are a reasonable size to learn. The universal ontology presumably won't. And there I'm, again, totally agree with that. So though I think computing the Uber ontology may be useful for alignment purposes, it's more interesting to ask, instead of thinking of how does this concept correspond to this concept, it's like, why are you carving this concept from the world? And what's the goal of this, asking this question? What's the goal of working with this category of thing? And again, goals versus means, which I've said in other circumstances, but I hadn't quite realized in the alignment world. So I'm sitting on this one right now, and that's one thing. That may be the main thing right now. Okay, over for now.
Simon Grant comes up, in my recollection, from the early topic mapping field. I seem to recall engaging with him years ago in the topic mapping community. And so it's logical to think that topic maps have this ability to federate different ontologies, to draw the mappings between them and make them more visible, more navigable. And so that would be a preference over trying to invent the grand upper level ontology.
Yeah. It's interesting because the way I've been thinking about aligning ontologies is very much creating the grand lattice. But on the other hand, and I think it's necessary for alignment, but is that what we want to use is totally another question. So yeah. Anybody else?
I guess I could talk about what I've been working on. Yeah, Joel mentioned the SenseDoing earlier. So in Open Global Mind, getting together and trying to do some sense making and result with some artifacts or tasks that people can do to improve the world in that space. Had our second meeting, which was initially around masks. Other people were bringing up, maybe air filtration inside buildings should fall under the same thing. And other people were thinking, oh, it'd be nice to talk about COVID in general. I'm like, we can't even do masks. We're not going to be able to do COVID. So we're working through all of that. Next meeting's Monday. Anyone's free to come if they want to give it a try. I'm not sure if it's going to result in any really good data for debate mapping, just because the group seems to have a lot of different goals and personalities. So it may take a lot of meetings to find a way to work together. Yeah, so I don't know the value of time yet, but see how it goes. And Joel, if you have any other observations from your time in the meeting, it might be interesting. And then outside of that, I'm working on we can come back to that, but I'm still kind of working on the idea of making a video series. I think I might be calling it something like Evidence Explorers, and it'll be kind of like true crime meets fact checking, where you walk through kind of two sides having an argument and all the kind of pros and cons, and then analyzing it as you go, and then asking for audience participation to bring up new pros and new cons and build out the map over multiple episodes. So
How do you plan on visualizing that map, like on a canvas or something, or how does that look?
Yeah, I haven't quite worked that out. Initially, it would just be a score across the bottom, giving a percentage of confidence in one side of the argument. And then there'd be boxes for each of the child claims. But at times I'll be diving deeper into it, and I haven't quite decided on the visualization of those. It'd probably just be something like Kialo or a regular tree map, because it's not going to get complicated enough. The other problem is that there will probably be multiple claims going on, so I might need multiple of these kind of thermometer score things, because one of the things I'm noticing on all these debates is that the two sides actually have two slightly different arguments, and they're each straw manning the other side. So making that apparent to the graphics and talk how neither of them are actually saying anything useful in the cases I'm looking at right now, because they're too busy straw manning the other side to be providing value. So yeah, I'm working on the visualization. I think I'm just going to play with it over time, but for right now, it's kind of like a thermometer with maybe a number at top and a number at bottom to say how many pros and cons there are. Although that's an oversimplification, and then a pointer on the thermometer with a percentage showing who's kind of winning at the moment. And then, as you talk through each side and they bring a con, it'll be flipping back and forth, which might be entertaining. Because if if you watch some of the good YouTube videos, they're often telling a story, and it's often like, oh, you know, these group of people are doing this, these are doing this, and so there's a lot of kind of that back and forth seems entertaining. So we'll see.
Yeah, I definitely like that back and forth idea, especially if you could like somehow save the state and go back, be like, what was it back then, and go forward. That'd be kind of neat.
You're saying how many pros, how many cons? Are you looking at recursion there? The cons of the cons and the cons of the pros and so on?
So that at the top level thermometer, it would just kind of be boxes for pros and cons. But as you're going through it, if a pro has a con against it and it gets canceled out, then they would visually just see it disappear rather than trying to show the whole map.
And same thing with the con?
Yeah, and same thing with the cons. And then also, you know, if there's a pro and then two pros and a con. So yeah, as you go down, there's some will be smaller than the others. So it would be using the reason score math in that case, but I don't think I'll be showing. I think at some point at the end, I might try and show the whole map, but it would be more like, you know, how we always complain about what do they call it? The kind of spider graphs, and not spider graphs because that's a different thing, but the you know, the like debate graph where it's just a whole bunch of floating things isn't very useful. I think might be kind of showing the overall thing won't be very useful either, but yeah, it'll probably use the reason scoring process in the back end and then just be showing the top level, and then they'll see it animate in and out so they can get a feel for how each claim impacts the total score.
Oh, sounds right. The yeah, reason score, if there's a pro and a con against something, it's supposed to be balanced, right?
If there's a pro and a con, you have zero confidence because there's a reason to believe and a reason not to, and if they're the same strength.
Okay.
Same weight.
So if there's a con with a pro and a con, it gets canceled.
And the strength is the strength based on like the children pro and cons of itself?
Yeah. So the children can affect either what we're calling confidence or truth, veracity, but pros and cons can also affect the importance of it compared to the other things in the tree. So something could be true, but twice as important as something else. So it has to be a combination of the two. Otherwise, it's just fighting over who has the most facts. But there's a bit of, but I'm hoping I won't have to explain that in the video. And hopefully, as you walk through it, it'll be obvious. It's like, oh, but you know, children being run over by cars is more important than the businesses in the area getting more walk by business. And then it'll just go bigger. But we won't explain that it's a weight, you know, it's a value. I probably won't explain how the math works in those cases. So Joe, any other observations about SenseDoing or?
I think my opinion hasn't changed a lot since the last meeting, or I mentioned just like the being able to focus on like one specific thing seems important. And like you said, there's a lot of different personalities and thoughts out there, so it's just kind of like a jumble. I do think that picking a topic that people care about is maybe not good for learning about the process for SenseDoing. Like when people care about it, then they're like, I feel like there's a lot of focus on the topic itself rather than like the process. So that's, I guess, something I thought of since the last time. And a lot of people care about masks or you know, like have thoughts about specific sides of it. So
Yeah, so and initially we were talking about SenseDoing as a way of practicing with processes and stuff, but I
Mhm.
think most of the crowd is more interested in actually having impact in the world. So if that's more, if the goal's leaning towards that, then it's probably more important to do something that that people are interested in and want to do something about.
right.
But then you're right, we'll have less kind of other meta results from the experiment.
Are you mapping as you go along?
We don't have a formal mapping. The idea was different people might map it in their own tools, like Jerry Mikowski's in there, so he's going to map in there. I figured I would put some of the facts in Reason Score. But so far we're just arguing about what to argue about, so there hasn't been anything to map.
There is the the mind map you made that I added some questions to, just to try and help be more specific about things. And that I feel like the next meeting, we all, like last meeting, we left off with, all right, let's try and be more specific. And then the meeting before that, we also left off with that. So I'm curious if this coming meeting will successfully do that and like do the thing like Jerry mentioned, like, you know, list all the things that people are talking about and then put them off to the side, except for the one that we agree, like we want to focus on. And I feel like if we do that, you know, there's some diagram or at least a list somewhere for that.
Yeah, so
To which
we've
point-
started kind of mind mapping, but not like debate mapping or anything.
Right.
Yeah, even if it's a mind map, and you know what I think about mind map, I think that live mapping often changes the dynamic significantly. I don't know if that's
Let's get
something-
more specific, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
So
and
hopefully
it's-
we'll do that.
It's also it's emotional. You're not responding to the person, you're responding to the point. That is the real function of mapping.
You're saying that if we had done live mapping like during the meeting, it might be better to like remove people's emotions, that kind of thing.
I'm saying that it tends to diffuse the conversations when people, like, if people get hostile. I don't know if people are getting hostile with that crowd. I don't think it's that much of an issue.
It's not hot. Yeah, it's more.
There's not enough.
There
there's
is
not
bias. There's definitely bias,
but
I wouldn't say hostile.
Yeah, I don't know if there's enough variety in this group of opinion. Like, are there like clear anti-masker, anti-vax?
No, it's just more interest. A lot of people are very passionate about government mandates, and other people want to talk about the quality. It's like they just want to. It's just no one wants to talk about the same subtopic. And then there are people. I was surprised a fair amount of the conversation was spent on talking what's the value of doing sense making, and I'm like, you're in a meeting called SenseDoing. I just think that needs to be an assumption when you step in the meeting. Let's
Well,
if you're not interested in the topic, don't join.
This is a great post-mortem question.
Yeah, so I was a little frustrated that I had to go and kind of justify the whole thing 3 meetings in. And then other people are like, well, there's this group of society that won't do sense making and can't be convinced of anything. And I'm like,
well, I feel like that was,
but that's kind of besides the point.
Specifically, like I feel like most of the people were, you know, prefaced with what it is, but that lady who knew about like masking expertise, or I don't remember what her credentials were, but I don't think maybe she didn't have as much like preface into like.
Yeah, she wasn't in the previous meetings and kind of came in late. Yeah.
So it is what it is, but yeah, curious to see where it goes. I'm definitely, now that you mention it, I think there's probably a split somewhere in like people that want to improve the process and people that want to improve the specific topic, and like maybe 2 meetings separately. I don't know if that makes sense, but I would be down. I was gonna say I'd be down on just like doing something more mundane or mundane in terms of the topic itself, like well, I don't know. I have to look at the topics, but you know, like
Abs
what are we having
versus
for dinner?
spaces.
Like, yeah. But I guess it'd have to be. It's still valuable to have something complex enough that like has, you know, information online and stuff. You know, just like what am I eating for dinner? That's not. I guess it's not good enough in terms of like having to. It's like purely opinion based. So
you remember I don't know if you saw the previous videos with Stephen using an example with Hawaiian pizza.
I think that's probably why. Yeah, I've seen that on the Socrates.
It should be generic, but yes, I hear you. From what I'm hearing, and I wasn't there, like there's more. What are we talking about, and why are we doing this? Than okay, let's pick a topic and have pros and cons. Because again, how much disagreement is there in that community on those issues?
There's not.
Well,
And that means you're not getting the full. I mean, I remember Simon Buckingham-Shum, who was, worked on a lot on Compendium and IBIS, say at some point, not all questions are wicked. Now, in this case, it's not wicked by virtue of not having a diverse enough crowd.
Problem is it wicked or the solvers?
Yeah.
The problem has a diverse enough crowd. It's just this group isn't. But I mean, we can't.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
I don't, right, but I don't want to limit my sense making to when I can find someone from the other side that's willing to spend time on, because I've tried that for years and I cannot find them. So, there's a certain amount of steel manning and a certain amount of devil's advocacy that can still provide value. And actually, one of the people in the group is very much on, okay, let's have an honest discussion about what is negative about wearing masks.
Good.
So that's interesting.
I feel like the problem is less that the lack of diversity, and the problem is more just like the lack of like focusing on one topic. Because I was ready to like try and play devil's advocate, like I was just waiting, but we never came to like one topic. It was still like just bouncing around. There's never like, oh well, what's the good and bad of this? It's just like, well, there's this, and then I also want to talk about that, and then that, and that. So.
Yeah, there's not even an agreement on what we want to accomplish, because if several people are like, well, I'm not trying to convince the anti-maskers to wear masks, and I'm not going to try and convince this this group of politicians that we should have mask mandates, and I'm like, well, so I really don't know what we're doing now, because that was all kind of like, I thought we were going to produce something so maybe that wasn't clear, or people just didn't read the 10 before they opened it up, which is probably what happened.
I think there is like opportunity for like meta learning, in that we're having a tough time like agreeing on what we're discussing. And that's, definitely, I mean, when you have people that are like if you wanted to use this on a topic that people are passionate about, that is something that you would have to get through as well. Just like, well, which part of the topic do you want to talk about, and tooling to potentially help with that, or some process, I'm sure could exist.
Yeah, and I think these are questions that should be really possible to push back. It's like, okay, why do you think it's not useful to talk to the government about a mask mandate? Why do you think it's not useful to talk to anti-maskers? I mean, and by the way, God, do I understand?
Yeah.
But it's really, I heard you say at some point that somebody was saying, oh, there's some people who are not using reason. And I hear that a lot now. And this is, on the one hand, I think I've said it myself, it's the impression we get. On the other hand, my goodness, this is dehumanizing. We're really at a point where, I mean, people people we disagree with have reasons. They may not be reasons we agree with. We may think they're wrong. We may think they have wrong premise. They've been whatever, but they have reasons for whatever. People have reasons.
They may not be good reasons.
Yeah, exactly. it's and saying, oh, they don't listen to reason. It's we're in the wrong place collectively when we probably both believe that of the other. It's
so I can't decide if it'd be good use of the time in those meetings to kind of step back and say, okay, this is, if you're going to be in this meeting, let's kind of agree on some assumptions of all the stuff, or if it's worthwhile, just say, hey, let's not talk about who our audience is, maybe specifically, but so I kind of tried to sidestep it, and I actually put something in there, which I don't think anyone responded to in our chat, and said, hey, here are some topics that should be discussed outside the main meetings. And I just kind of listed them. So if you want to talk about it, let's talk about it, but let's not distract from doing work together.
Yeah, focus matters. Totally off topic. Sorry, I'm changing focus. Haha, if you're okay with it. There was another remark that caught my ear about talking about the topic versus talking about the process. And yeah, I think it's important to separate those times. You need both, but they need to be distinct. We had that exact conversation yesterday in the Collaborative Tech Alliance space, where, some people, hi Carl, some people are trying to make a tool now for immediate usage and to solve a short-term problem, and connect this tool to that tool and technical problem, and or create this specific collaboration scenario, satisfy the specific collaboration scenario. And that's clearly valuable. That's one thing. And others are thinking about the grand scale of global conversation. And on the one hand, it's important to have the conversation between these two groups, because you want to understand why how well is the local tactical action aligned with the long-term thinking, but they're different conversations at a deep level, and connecting them is yet another conversation. And you want to know which one you're engaging in, because if you jump from one on the other endlessly, it does cut momentum. And it was very interesting to have this conversation. We identified in this small subgroup I was part of, we identified 3 tensions like this. That was one. The second one was, are we trying to build one, the metaphor was a baby, like this one unified tool, and what are all the parts we need to have that one tool? Or are we trying to build an ecosystem, which is not the same level of alignment? So that was another interesting conversation. And I don't remember the third as well. I should probably have my notes somewhere. But it was interesting to have, I guess these are very common types of concerns, and separating conversation is important. I'm reporting on stuff happening in the Collaborative Tech Alliance Collabathon, and Bentley and Joel were reporting on SenseDoing in OGM. Over.
Yeah, so Mark, Antoine, to that point, a month ago or something, I was trying to kind of think of a way to kind of map out where people are in different on trying to figure out this kind of collaboration thing, because it is happening in literally every group of people that I'm trying to work with in this space, because it is such a wide open. Well, it's a lot easier when one person's paying your paycheck, right? You just kind of defer to that vision, right? But since we're working in volunteer and collaborative spaces, everyone comes in with their own opinions. So now I'm thinking of it like there's a bunch of spectrums that you can kind of plot people on, and one I hadn't thought of is, of course, like kind of long-term goals versus short-term goals. Right, and maybe that was in my chart actually. I'm thinking about it, but several of us have, in certain pieces, we're focusing on the long term and focusing on the short term. Like me and Jamie are like, we're not going to worry about having a system where people can input data right now. We're just going to have, quote, professionals create the maps and then have people have a more informal process for people to do it. While many people in this group are like, well, we got to figure out identity and governance and all sort of stuff. So it's just different scales. We're choosing a short-term goal in that area, and other people choosing long-term. One's not right or wrong. It's well, maybe, but not obviously right or wrong. So it's just kind of preferences. So yeah, I don't know if mapping those out would be helpful, or if that's just a kind of busy work and people can just talk about it and figure it out.
Yeah, put it in the chat, but for the recording, the third axis was people with a business model, building a product, and we want to make money of that product, and commoners and people who are trying to really share, we were very clear when we said that it's legitimate to want to be paid for your work also. It wasn't, we weren't trying to make it a value judgment, but it's a different way of working. When we want our tool to be better with interop versus we want all our tools to be better with interop. It's a different mindset. But yeah, are we building one thing or an ecosystem, and are we building something useful now, or are we experimenting towards a long-term plan? And they're different. I'm sure there's other axes. Those were the ones we identified in that space. And we have that tension in this space, right? All the time, which is fine. I think we need both, but it's interesting to name it.
Out of curiosity, in the collabothon thing, are you talking about your group as in like one team you were working with, or like the whole everybody participating in the?
There was a session which had the express goal of, let's see what synthesis we can do different projects and how different projects may help one another, or someone may help someone else's project, yada yada. And this was in a Zoom room with 2 people because we do kind of speed dating. What about actually we didn't do speed dating. I proposed that, but I said I'd like to talk with this person because I think we have things in common. Absolutely fascinating project, by the way. Someone doing one of those universal mapping things on Holochain. I'll send the URL while Bentley described.
Yeah, and I don't need to go on this unless people want to, but this is me kind of mapping out some of the different goals of different people. And this is a bad kind of visual because it combines a Venn diagram and some other diagram in a very unclear way. But like Ben was coming in here and he didn't care about group cognition. It didn't even really he didn't really like that term. But so Tim and I are like, oh well, we're gonna work on group building, and it'll benefit individual as well. And they're digital, kind of tools that we're building. But Tim's more focused on like what I was calling memory, which is like, we need the canonical kind of repository, and I'm working on analysis. So I want to build a score on top of it. And then Steve Yano, who's a rhetoric professor, he's working on people's individual skills in all these areas. People are going to do some analysis, and they need to work on their memory, and they need to work on their processing and their outputs to other people, because he's mostly working on verbal stuff. So that was kind of some way to visualize it. But it might be easier to do something like this is the number of people, the size of the group that our tools work with, And like Ben's working on just like, well, he's focused on a single person, even though a group may use the tool. And then Marc-Antoine seems to be like in this, like it can be useful. There's a dotted line here showing it can be useful for these small groups, but it's kind of like made for like hundreds and thousands of people. And me, like my tool eventually should be used across the whole spectrum, but I'm right now focusing on kind of medium-sized groups. So that might be a way to kind of like visualize, and then that's just one spectrum. And then we could talk about long-term goals versus short-term goals and stuff like that. So anyways, that, I don't know if anyone would find that useful, some sort of charter. I mean, this is just a visualization of numbers. Where you can say I'm like 1 to 2 and is my main goal, and then my general is my focus, but my goal is bigger, whatever. And you can even have concerns saying, well, if you work on this area, it's dangerous for society. That doesn't really work for us as a group, but for some of the other stuff. So people had some concerns about different things. Anyways, so I don't know if anyone finds that useful.
I definitely think it's useful, especially to come back to if you have questions, if you're working on a specific subset of topics or something, and say, oh, this other person is doing the same thing or what have you. So more data like this, I find useful.
I'm curious what you call deciding output. That's more
Like automatic decision.
creating the
or-
maps, or yeah, see, it could mean many things. I'm curious. See, when you said it, for example, when I first saw analysis, I guess I'm in analysis. But then when you said ranking, it's like, oh no, that's not what I'm doing.
It's more like visualization or auditory. So for like Steviano, it's the skill of what words to say in a speech, right? Or in a debate. But for us, it would be what type of visualizations are we using?
It's what I call curated synthesis, I think.
I mean, in a way, you're synthesizing it to you're doing some synthesis to make it an output, but I would. Synthesis could also be just what do I think of it, regardless of what format it's in.
The curated is very important because it's exactly that. It's how I would, or maybe a small group would make a coherent map / text / as you said, voice out of exploring conversation space. So it's you're deciding out of everything, I'm going to take these as salient and make that into, okay, this is how I'll present it. I think it's what you mean.
Well, so the presentation would be, but there's some things that you do that has nothing to do with presentation. That's just understanding. I might have a spreadsheet, but I may never show the spreadsheet to anyone. The spreadsheet is my analysis.
Okay. So it's more filtering.
It's doing my own internal analysis, and then deciding the output is like, how am I going to share this with other people? Which it might just be share the spreadsheet, but it may also be, oh, let's pivot the table and make a chart.
I'm still maintaining, I still think it's what I call curated synthesis, because what you're describing is you do a filter of, what you want to present and not want to present, which is what I call curation. This is salient, this is not salient. This is a top level, this is a lower level, and if we dig in detail someday. And then you choose to arrange it as output. Anyway, I think we say the same thing here.
Well, it's just, I don't know. You could decide an output without doing curation if you're just outputting everything everyone else put in the system. So that and I'm just saying that's a separate piece. And then synthesis to me sounds more like that analysis bit rather than just deciding on the output, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, analysis feels
it's a different way of looking at the same thing.
Analysis feels broad because when you speak about scoring, scoring is more for me kind of, well, it's scoring, it's another thing, and yeah, there is an analysis there. But if I'm, for example, looking at common recurring themes or refactoring, or what's the based presupposition, like the work of presupposition that Jamie does, for example. For me, that's a form of analysis, and it's what I'd call analysis.
Well, that's what I would put there as well. And that's why it's not scoring, it's analysis, because it could be that, it could also be, it could be voting.
Yeah, I'd separate the kind of putting numbers on concepts from recombining concepts. I think they're distinct things.
So you could break that up into smaller sections.
Yep.
Reposition things. And this is just one way of looking at it based on the arguments.
Yeah.
But to just store the data only as like, this is the size of the group I'm working on, and, put numbers, and then people can say, okay, I hope to eventually cover this space, but right now I'm focusing on this space. And then we get an idea of where we're going to butt heads. Because a lot of times we're just arguing about, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should do that. And it's right. Oh, well, you should do that if you're, like some people, in here want to work on, we need an identity system. I'm like, well, I don't need an identity system for what I'm doing. Not yet. I mean, I will eventually, just not right now.
Yeah.
So as an exercise, we could try and say, oh, people could make up what are the spectrums that we want to do, and then people could just number them, and then we can consolidate. But I don't know if people want to spend time doing that.
I wouldn't be opposed. I'm pretty open, I guess, to whatever, but it has a non-zero amount of interest to me.
I have a very old similar diagram I should fish out, just as a other data point somewhere. I'll try to find it.
I do like the spectrums that they're more explicit, I guess, about what they are, and like the options are clear, whereas the diagram thing is, as we can see, more arguable, I guess. Without like examples for specific options, it's harder, I think.
With the diagram, a Venn diagram, you're limited on the number of dimensions as well.
Right. And their position all implies something where you may not intentionally be trying to imply something about the position, because you're just trying to put it on there. If there's more things to add, where do you put it? I don't know.
We've got about 15 more minutes. This group has recently, we had less participation. This is a very well attended meeting, actually. Does anyone want to throw out what are our goals as far as our collaboration, or things they want to get out of this group right now? Or Tim, you haven't been able to make it much. I don't know if you're coming back in, and if you have any wants or needs, so I just want to kind of open it up, see if anyone or wanted feedback on their project or something.
I'm in the same situation as always so far, or not as always, but as I've been the last few months, which is 2 heads down with work, too much going on. First of all, I still don't know when meetings are going to be, so I'm very confused. So it's hard for me to plan to be at a meeting right now. Even when I plan, like I said, I could do Fridays. I couldn't do Fridays the way I thought I could. So my life is unpredictable. So I'm going to stay in this mode for a while, I think, until I free up a little bit. In terms
Now,
of,
if you want, there's an iCal link that you can put on your calendar and have them show up at least.
I'll try. I think I did that once and it didn't work, or it went to the wrong calendar, so I'll keep trying.
You mean that you don't know when your work meetings are, or when this meeting is?
When these meetings are, it's both sides, because my work schedule and life schedule is extremely dynamic right now. So like even knowing when it is on this side I miss a lot of them. But yeah, you know, in terms of my interest in what I'm doing and everything, I still think about the problems of epistemic security and so on, right? I'm not even gonna write up a thing. I wrote somebody a comment related to Chat GPT this week that I think I'm just gonna post on my Medium just to have something up there. But it was essentially it was somebody who posted how even Chat GPT learns faster than the libs about the truth of gun safety or something like that. And so he showed himself having a conversation with Chat GPT and how Chat GPT was pulling out stats and learned, right? And so I kind of went off on him about essentially weaponizing artificial intelligence that, you know, well, in my comment, I linked to somebody that convinced Chat GPT that 9 + 4 is 15, for example, right? Chat GPT insisted a couple times that it was 13, and it says, "Okay, I'm sorry," and it in fact used, when it apologized for being wrong, "Thank you for teaching me," and everything, used the exact phrase that the guy Chat GPT had used in his conversation. And it was just like, you know, please don't make things worse. You know, the guy who writes these Substack things is a fairly reasonable person, but was just totally
It's like, oh wow, you manipulated a 6-year-old into saying what you wanted. Congratulations.
Yeah,
has no bearing on reality whatsoever.
No, it's like I was trying to figure out what kind of fallacy that is, because it's like it's an appeal to authority, but it's an appeal to a false and suborned authority, because it's essentially somebody who sounds really intelligent, because that's the danger of ChatGPT, right? Is that the way it writes is so good that it sounds authoritative no matter how wrong it is, and it doesn't show any sense of being unsure of itself, which is remarkably convincing to people. Actually, it's like, in terms of rhetoric and persuasion, it is a very persuasive strategy. And then, you know, it's not an authority because it really doesn't know. And then the other part is it's suborned, because in any given conversation, if you try hard enough, you can convince it of your point, right? So, and then you show that to the world. Look, I won an argument with this very authoritative figure. Is a very strange thing. Brave new world, basically. That's a very interesting topic. I'll take a look at that link. Thank you.
Yes. It's this Schneier has been writing amazing stuff on these issues and recommended.
Yeah, I don't know if I should try to pull something more well thought through together and more comprehensive, or just post my comment that, you know, it's like in 5 minutes I said 80% of what I wanted to say, right? So maybe I should take it. Yeah,
it's a fascinating topic, and it's extremely important, and it's another reason we absolutely damn need to get our global argument database together, because it is the main defense against this kind of.
Yeah, and that's the point that I would like to make. You know, it took me 5 months to write my other article, and I have another one. I have several that I want to write, but the whole point is, if you can break down epistemic attacks into attack vectors and into defenses and the side effects, the third order effects of those interventions and everything, I think it really starts to make the case for a canonical database of arguments, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, it is, I think, and the government is beginning to realize that epistemic attacks are a thing, and that we need epistemic defense, and it is one of our strongest arguments for making this happen.
Yeah.
And definitely, it's also, I don't speak about SenseCraft so much, design has been undergoing a lot of evolution. And I realized the point of SenseCraft, not as it is now, but as I'm envisioning it now, is to get people to learn epistemic patterns. We need people to practice epistemic identification and epistemic pattern finding and pattern detection. It needs to be a basic skill. That
Right,
people-
and like one of my main arguments for people who are like, oh, that won't work, nobody will do it, you know, it doesn't, you know, you can't build something that's going to change the way people think or whatever. It's like, it's always, you know, how did Twitter do it? How did TikTok do it? How did Facebook do it? How did, you know, how many examples have we seen in the past 20 years that have literally changed the way people talk and think and interact, right?
Yeah. And of course, it won't happen if we don't try it. So yeah.
So
What are positive examples of how Twitter and Facebook have changed the way people talk and think?
I don't
You
think
didn't
we
say
need
positive.
what do you need positive?
I'm
Yeah.
not saying
I
it's
thought that
positive.
was
I'm saying
implied.
that no, it was not implied. The whole argument is information systems and communication systems can impact the way people think and collaborate. That's the point.
Even the internet, actually, if you want to go that route. The
Well,
printing
every
press.
part,
The
even
printing press,
cable,
right.
yeah, everything. You know, every form of communication has radically changed. Yeah.
So let me say I'm not pushing back on teaching people epistemic thinking or critical thinking. I guess the problem is I came across a good quote, is like you can't do a lot of carpentry with your bare hands, and I don't think you can do a lot of epistemic thinking with your bare mind.
Oh, cute.
So it's good to teach people, but we also don't have a tool. We don't have a saw or a hammer or a nail in this space yet.
I almost agree with that. Let me make a big caveat. I agree that better tools will improve the epistemic thinking quality, but I do think that you can't do good epistemic thinking with a single bare mind, but you can do a lot of epistemic thinking with a few bare minds. And getting people a good social context for epistemic thinking, including serious games, is what we're trying, but it doesn't have to be that. People have done epistemic thinking historically, and they're doing it better in groups. Thinking is done better in groups. I mean, that's a whole argument of Enigma of Reason. I'm not backing up from it. And how minds change is also saying the same thing. And I'm really leaning into this big time, getting people into the habit of questioning one another on their epistemic priors, on their epistemic mechanisms, and making that a social convention is what will change things. And yes,
So
if we
that
can
is all
get
true.
tooling happen. What?
That is all true, but what I'm saying is that's like, oh, we're gonna build a bed. Let's get 50 people together, and we're gonna break the wood with our hands. You know what I'm saying? So
I don't disagree with the
and
tool.
some of these other things are. I mean,
well, that's a tool too.
I mean,
right?
like should they? I mean, even like using a spreadsheet. Okay, so now you have a saw, right? But people.
Pen and paper was very useful.
right, but if you just but when you say get some people together, that doesn't even imply pen and paper.
No.
What I'm saying is that their brains can only handle their brain. Well, no, I'm just saying it wasn't explicit. You say getting several minds together, a person could come away from that statement with the understanding, oh, I need to talk to these. I need to get a group of 5 people and have a conversation. And based on that conversation, we'll have better epistemics. And that is true. It's just there is a limit to the effectiveness of that. And there are tools that make that substantially better. And I think there's a specific type of tool that we're not taking into account, which of course is my tool. But it's a fundamentally different tool. Like it's the difference between a reciprocating saw and you know, and a pocket knife.
And I started with agreeing that tools mattered. B, I do think that social dynamics matter more than tools for now, though of course tools can enhance certain social dynamics. So I don't want to claim supremacy of one to another. I do think that single user tools will always be limited, but I don't think you're arguing for that either. I don't think we're disagreeing. I will go, however, where I think of the tool a bit differently than you are. I think the main goal of the tool should be to teach people epistemic patterns, not to calculate it for them, so if you see what I mean, but to,
I think that's useful, but at some point there are problems that a group of people cannot solve without a tool. And and I think that we're getting more and more problems like that. And I don't think we have a tool yet that actually helps with that problem of the limit of the human mind of, you know, being able to manage like 6 or 7 things at a time and being able to weigh things.
Yep.
We don't have a tool that does that because all the weighing happens in the brain. We don't have a tool where that weighing happens outside.
No, I basically agree. I still don't think you have the right algorithm, but that's me being. I don't.
I don't.
No, I don't have it yet. I don't have it yet. That's criticism.
But is anyone else? But no one's working on that algorithm.
I am.
I want to say something. I disagree with that, Bentley. I think that if you need the tool to make the process, whatever this process is, happen, then there's a failure because we're in Chat GPT territory where the tool tells you what is. I don't know why I feel that way. I'm not done.
Do you know how much money's in your bank account right now?
Bentley, I think it's important that I was almost done, but it's important that I don't speak a lot, but let me finish. Sorry, now I've lost my train of thought.
Chat GPT territory.
But yeah, I mean, if a person does not be able to sort of sit on their own and say, I believe that I understand why this conclusion is the case, I think there's a problem because then it's externalized whether that is the case or not. And I hope that we can find a tool that gives people shortcuts to more quickly arrive at their own conclusions, but not a tool that becomes the source of the conclusions in the absence of humans' ability to do that without the tool. So, okay, so now I'm done.
That's kind of a false dichotomy.
Okay.
So the person can still understand why the conclusion has come about, but it still may be enough data that they cannot contain all the data in their head at one time. Just like you know how much money you have in your bank account because you look at your bank statement, but you don't, in your mind, have to remember every single deposit and withdrawal. But you can at any time go in there and look at every deposit and withdrawal and say, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. But you can't keep it all in your mind at once. So you use a calculator and you understand why it is completely inspectable.
So
and that's completely, but ChatGPT doesn't have that.
Okay, I agree that that's a good example to change things. I guess what I would just say as a short response to that is I don't trust my bank account. I rely upon it because the amount of effort it would take me to actually reconcile my bank account every month with how risky I think it is that I'm being cheated is just not a good trade-off for me. But I would never say that's absolutely what my bank account should be because I have not confirmed that. So I would need to run through that step. And my only point, and maybe I'm talking a little bit past yourself, so thank you for clarifying sort of what you mean. My only point is that because I could still go and do those numbers. Hopefully I could get to the beginning of my zero balance. I could look at every single transaction. I could be like, yes, 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 yes. And I could arrive at today and I could say, oh, and it matches my account. Therefore, Carl will write a note to himself. You have manually inspected all this and you can, trust it to be true.
But that is a feature of Bentley's tool. I do agree with him. It's the algorithm.
It's not a machine learning algorithm. It's a very deterministic.
It's a simple equation. It's a simple equation. I agree with him. There's a point where aggregation is more than the mind, but as long as the aggregation technique is transparent and the inputs are transparent, fair enough. But yes, but I agree with your general point, Carl, that we don't want opaque answers. And that is what is so frightening about the role of AI in human decision making. I don't want decisions that are, we don't know where they come from, nobody's imputable, it's nobody's fault, nobody's responsibility. That is insane. but we all depend on decisions that were taken with aid of computer. We go on bridges that don't collapse because an engineer used a computer to compute the tensile strength, and we're all okay with that. Because at some point somebody checked the equations for tensile strength.
And it won't ever be absolutely true. Also, to your point, like, it's not like this is an absolute thing, but we're closer to reality with it. Like, it might be off by a couple bucks here and there, but it's better than if I tried to remember it all.
Yeah.
And if you're having an argument with your wife or spouse, I should say, then, you know, the argument's going to be a lot shorter if you have some sort of calculation.
And I think it's absolutely that way. I'm having this ongoing argument with Bentley, but I agree that what he's doing is absolutely important that way. We need, if we want to have large scale conversation, we need to be able to do large scale aggregation. And large scale aggregation means more than will ever fit in one person's head. If we want to do deliberative democracy, which for me is an explicit goal, it means we have to be able to make computation out of everybody's claims. And that will never fit in one person's head. And we want to.
So Marcus, when you said you're kind of working on that, what part of your, I mean,
it's in the sense that I'm working at another level, but I am. What I do want is composable claims. And my problem with your equation is that it's putting all claims on the same level. And, you know, when I keep, it's hackneyed at this point. Oh, we need to distinguish the causal links from the epistemic links from blah, 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 because they don't aggregate the same way. And getting those distinctions right, which is I'm still engaged with, it's because I want to think, okay, how do I compose causal links? Well, that's actually, I don't have to think that out. That's Joshua Pearl's work on causality. How do I compose ontology? Well, that's formal concept analysis. How do I compose epistemic? This one is a bit less clear. There's some defeasibility, but there's other features. I'm still working hard on that one. But the question of how to make claims composable, there's not going to be one formula for all claims because claims have different structure and compositional structures. And that's what I'm working on. What are the compositional structures and how do they interrelate?
So you imagine that at some point in the future, you will want a formula-based scoring, not
Yes.
voting-based scoring.
Yeah, or at least a compositional algorithm. And
So
yes.
yeah, so what I would say is that I'm doing the more short-term goal of solving a subset of disagreements
Yes,
that can be handled with a simpler
correct,
formula.
correct, absolutely correct.
And what I have right now may not even work for even the simplest debate. Yeah, which is probably what Mark.
I'm saying your model is a bit too simple, and it's, you cannot get the right formula without some of the distinctions I'm talking about, and you've chosen not to have them.
Yeah, I mean, for now, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to run some experiments with what I have, and then I'll probably figure out what you're telling me, and then I'll embody that. And then, but yeah. So I'd be
interested to have more discussions about your efforts between causal arguments and epistemic and so on and so forth, and composition. You know, we've gone through these things many times, but I don't think we've gone through them in the way you're going through them right now, which I would.
No, that's correct. It's still very early days for me to think that way, but I'm now thinking of composition as the main. I've been doing a lot of category theory with causality folks, because the causality people are thinking about composition of causal graphs through the lens of category theory. And I'm not pretending to be a competent category theorist or categorician or whatever you want to call it. But I'm now getting a bit better intuition of how applied category theory does composition. And I'm trying to see, okay, can I carry that to other forms of maps? Still, I don't have the answers yet. I'm beginning that endeavor.
Well, we've gone past the hour. And I got a meeting coming up. So is everyone okay with closing down the meeting? Excellent. Well, thanks everyone. And we'll talk more next week at a secret time that Tim does not know about.
Yeah, the Hangouts kind of sends me alerts. And they sometimes manage to show up. Sometimes they're wrong. But yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should go through the calendar stuff, but it's your calendar, isn't it?
Not mine, but I voted on it. Yeah.
Ciao, ciao.
All right, guys.
All right, so.